coaches can be pretty quiet about position battles, but Bret Bielema a little more forthcoming about things today. So should we throw it out here? What did you find the most intriguing? Because we have position battles on the offensive line for a starting spot at right guard, the nose tackle competition. We got two guys competing for that. Linebacker's probably going to be a rotation, but I think safety is probably one of the most intriguing battles. And then kicker. I'm going to throw kicker in there. So start us off, Joey. What do you find to be the most intriguing battle 12 days before the season opener?
Safety, because the competition also came with some news today. Matthew Bailey, Bret Bielema doesn't expect to be available for the Toledo game. In fact, he's got a follow-up appointment the Monday after that. So it sounds like Bret Bielema said Penn State would be the earliest. They hope they could get him back, which leads us to the safety battle because they lost their two starting safeties from last year, Kendall Smith, Sidney Brown. We assume Matthew Bailey was going to be one of those given his freshman year. We'll see how that goes when he comes back. But they also were pretty active in the portal. And now that we know that Bret Bielema mentioned a summer setback for Matthew Bailey, that does fill in some gaps of, wait, they've got another safety coming on campus that they've gotten a commitment from. So we're looking at a safety battle between Demetrius Hill, Nicario Harper, Clayton Bush, and Miles Scott. And Bret Bielema singled out Demetrius Hill and Clayton Bush. It sounds like that boundary, that strong safety position. And Miles Scott, a name that continues to come up.
Write him in ink. I don't feel great about every position battle. I wrote in my depth chart last week, my projected depth chart. We'll talk about the one I would change. I feel pretty good about Miles Scott. Like, I feel better about him than any other safety in this battle. Like, it felt like coming into today, there was 4 guys I had in mind. Now I think there's 3. But yeah, Clayton Bush even playing strong safety, I think was kind of newsworthy because they talked about him playing free earlier in camp. So I think
that hawking skills, Bret Bielema has been going on. That screams free safety.
Yeah, now they can, they do a little bit of both in each. It's not, you're not always in the box when you're a strong safety, but you're more often covering a tight end or coming down into the box. So Demetrius Hill, Clayton Bush sounds like that battle. I think Miles Scott's pretty locked in.
What a story for Miles Scott. Wide receiver. He was a wide receiver, a rotational wide receiver a year ago, moved over to cornerback in the spring. That was about 2 weeks worth. Then they quickly moved him back. Aaron Henry had been fighting for this one for a while. He looks good. Physically, Miles Scott looks good. He's a name we've heard a lot about. And you and I were kind of like, well, I don't know about that. And yeah, I would say Bret Bielema didn't give a lot of names at free safety today. That was what was interesting. If Bret Bielema wants to, we've seen him pour gas on a position battle competition that probably wasn't really ever won at quarterback. We've talked about that. He didn't mention a lot of names, man. It was Demetrius Hill and Clayton Bush at 1, and then Miles Scott at free safety. All right.
Every season has these stories, right? Miles Scott feels like Miles Scott feels like it's going to be a story because, boy, he's in a position that you're set up to succeed in this free safety position, in this defense, especially if we think the front is going to be as good as it's going to be. So Kendall Smith went from entering the transfer portal, looking to go down a level just so he can get playing time, to 5 interceptions and all Big Ten or all honorable mention him making an NFL training camp, right? Like Miles Scott, who's got multiple years of eligibility left, could be another phenomenal story at that free safety position. So they seem to have a lot of confidence in him. The way Aaron Henry talked about him in the spring caught our attention. The way he was talking about his one interception that just seemed to be freaky.
Oh my goodness gracious! You
sounds like the greatest
highlight video,
greatest interception ever. They got to throw that training camp video out there at some point. But the way he talked about it was like, okay, maybe we should think about him on the 2 deep. And some people were talking about, this might be a story for 2024. Well, with Bailey's injury, seems like he's making the most of it. But at that position, he talked to you about it, Joey, as a former wide receiver. And it's not like he was a nothing recruit. I know he's a walk-on, but he was a 3-star by 24/7 Sports, went to prep school. He's got some talent. And I'm excited to see it because obviously we haven't seen a lot of what Miles Scott can bring. But it's one of the storylines of the first couple of weeks because they're playing some really good passing offenses.
Yeah, remember even a week ago or so, Aaron Henry said, I'm not saying he's Kirby Joseph or Kendall Smith, but he's got, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he's got the talent of those guys. And I thought, all right, good afternoon, Aaron Henry. That's a statement.
Especially the Kirby Joseph one, right? Because Kirby's kind of a freak athlete.
The path has been, yeah, he really was. The path has been similar, right? Wide receiver, kind of where do you fit here? Where do you fit here? Kirby Joseph played he was debating between wide receiver and defensive back when Bret Bielema got here. Kendall Smith had been all over the place. Miles Scott was a wide receiver, obviously moved over. So that was a pretty interesting bit of news, but we still don't know the strong safety. I would lean towards Demetrius Hill.
Yeah.
But I still think we're going to see Clayton Bush. I think you're going to see him in that dime package a lot and probably rotating in there. Bret Bielema's all about this guy. I mean, he has been really, really high on him.
He always drops it. If I had 2 or 3 years with him, right, he'd be an NFL prospect.
He may as well just look into every high school coach's office and say, listen, like just ignore the rest. He's not talking to us, talking to every high school coach.
Demetrius Hill fits the bill of what, I mean, you talk about the guy that looks closest physically to Matthew Bailey, long, strong, physical, athletic. Demetrius Hill fits that. And the way they've talked about his intelligence, his football IQ, that stands out to me. So I think Demetrius Hill would probably be the guy. I think they're both going to play, though. So I think it's both going to be a rotation here at the strong safety position. Maybe it's Demetrius Hill 70% of the snaps and Clayton Bush 30. I don't know what that would be, but I think they're both going to play. So I think focusing on one, kind of like the linebacker situation, Kenetta Odeluga and Dylan Rosiak, they're both going to play. One will probably play more reps than the other, but they're both going to play significant reps. So, yeah, I think we got a little bit more clarity on the safety position, which was like the position I was guessing at the most. I felt like Miles Scott was starting to separate himself, but we still didn't know who was playing where. And the fact that he didn't mention Nicario Harper for either of those. And then you asked a great question today of, we saw last year the safeties, the nickel, the star position, practice with the safeties. And he said, well, that was more because Quan Martin was a safety who played star. And Xavier Scott, who sounds like he's going to be a breakout candidate this year. They have so much confidence in him. He's a corner that's practicing with the stars, but he mentioned that their backup is likely a safety. I think that's Nicario Harper, because I was told when he was committed that he could play the star position. That was kind of what they thought he would be. I thought we saw him playing strong safety during training camp when Matthew Bailey was out, but sounds like he could be a star. Tyson Rooks has been in that mold. So just trying to figure out where Nicario Harper fits. I think it could be that star role. Maybe it's the free safety behind Miles Scott. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. But, I mean, I keep coming back to, we talked about it when these commitments happened. First Demetrius Hill and then Clayton Bush. Why? Like, you already took Nicario Harper for spring ball. Then you go out and add 2 more safeties. And I think it's twofold. I think it's maybe that's around the time. We don't know when Matthew Bailey had this, as Bret Bielema described it, setback. But maybe that's around that time. And maybe they just wanted to see a little bit more out of Nicario Harper in spring that they didn't see. And then they went out to what we thought at the time may have been insurance, but maybe it's more plug and play guys. We'll see. I mean, that's the hard part about not being able to see this in person. I still think Nicario Harper is going to he's going to be in the 2 deep. I don't think there's anything beyond that, possibly at a few different spots. But I did find that interesting that he wasn't brought up. And as we say, when Bret Bielema said the backup may come from the safety room, you can kind of go down the list here of who we've seen at safety. And he's the guy who would most fit in that mold there.